This lecture has been made available to you courtesy of the American Numismatic Society.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon. Today, we're joined by Dr. Ralph Mathisen, who's a fellow of the American Numismatic Society and also professor of history, classics, and medieval studies at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. In addition to being the founding editor of the Journal of Late Antiquity, he was also the founding editor of the Oxford Studies in Late Antiquity, which he continues to edit. Today, he'll be discussing the Roman Emperor Constantine and his plans for dynastic succession. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ralph.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Ryan. Let me, no matter how many times you do this, you're always concerned about the technology. And so just to see whether your slides will advance. Okay, get out of there. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah, before I begin, I have to say, just on a little personal note, this morning as I was thinking about the talk, and I was kind of taking a trip down memory lane and thinking, going way back in the Wayback Machine to those old days at the ANS, and I mean really old days at the ANS. I know I want to give a shout out to Warren Esty, who like me goes back to the antediluvian period, and he will remember those days, and just all of the good people there that I enjoyed meeting and knowing and working with, and some of you will remember them. Nancy and Heidi particularly come to mind. And then there was Margaret and Les and the curators, Michael, Alan, Bill, Dick, and some of you may also remember Michael DiBiase, the photographer, took such wonderful pictures. And then, of course, there was Frank Campbell, Frank Campbell, the very first ANS person that I met. And he was just always so very friendly. But I think the last time I gave a talk at the ANS was way back in 1990, where, believe it or not, that long ago, I was giving a talk on digital imaging. And so it's so very nice to be back here again and giving another talk on a project I've been working on for some time now about the Emperor Constantine, the succession plans of the Emperor Constantine as revealed on coins and medallions. One of the cool things, just let me get this off the screen here. Yeah. One of the cool things about being a historian is that we find historical parallels in unexpected places, parallels that are so eerily similar that we almost would think that we're living in the Matrix. One example of this involves the parallels between the 12th century English King Henry II and the 4th century Roman Emperor Constantine I. For one thing, both of them had connections with lions, hence the title of this talk. Thus, Henry's coat of arms had lions, lots of lions. And regarding Constantine, there was a famous story about how in his youth, the Emperor Galerius, who was plotting against him, set him to battle a lion. Constantine triumphed, escaped to his father, and the rest is history. This Solidus here, issued by Constantine, may commemorate this story, which also was depicted in a Rubens-inspired tapestry of 1625. Both Henry and Constantine also were portrayed in modern blockbuster movies, which some of you will remember. Henry, the ruler of the Angevin Empire in the 1968 film The Lion in Winter, and Constantine, who ruled a rather larger empire in the 1961 film Constantine the Cross. Another parallel is that both rulers were concerned with barbarians, Henry with being one, and Constantine with defeating them. More to the point, both rulers had problems with their succession, including problematic sons and problematic wives. The film portrays 51-year-old Henry at Christmas of 1183, embroiled with Eleanor of Aquitaine, his wife, in plans to arrange his own succession. After the death of his eldest son and co-regent, also Henry, during a revolt in 1183, there had remained three squabbling children, three squabbling candidates for the throne, Richard, Geoffrey, and John. 800 years earlier, another 50-something ruler, Constantine I, also had four sons who were candidates for the throne. He, too, named the eldest Crispus as co-ruler, only to have him likewise embroiled in treason and die young, leaving Constantine with three sons to decide among Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. But at this point, the parallels begin to break down. Constantine did not come from a tradition where the eldest son might be expected to be the sole successor. In the Roman Empire, it was more complicated, and getting news out about who the next emperor would be always was a major concern. So let's begin by looking at emperors, how emperors made that happen. When an emperor chose a colleague and or a successor, it was crucially important that the news be announced as soon as possible and spread as widely as possible. And the very best news outlet, as I'm sure all of us here know, was coins, which not only circulated to all corners of the empire, but also targeted crucial special interest groups, such as the military, imperial officials, and the wealthy. But the problem with coins is that space was limited. Words and images had to be carefully selected to have the maximum effect. In this case, the words usually included what became the traditional ranks and titles of newly named emperors, including Caesar, Princeps Juventutis, that is the leader of the youth, and Filius Augusti, that is son of Augustus. In addition, the images, that is the iconography, could visually portray how a new emperor related to other members of the imperial condominium. In general, status distinctions could be displayed either linearly, where the person on the left ranked higher, or circularly, where rank was distributed in a counterclockwise direction, beginning with the senior person and then going around like so. Making use of these material sources allows us to nuance the evolution of Constantine's succession plans over time, for one seeks in vain for any connected detail accounts in the narrative sources. When Constantine first came to power in 306, he had 300 years of history regarding what methods and what kinds of titulature could be used for naming a successor. He also had learned what worked and what didn't work. So I propose to discuss all this like a three-stage rocket. First, what the past history of imperial succession methods was. Secondly, what Constantine's personal experiences with his own succession was. And finally, how Constantine arranged for successors. In the course of this discussion, we will see how each stage builds on the previous stage. So, stage one, succession practices during the Principate. That is the first phase of the empire. When Augustus established the Roman Empire in the form we call the Principate, ostensibly in the year 27 BCE, he promoted the fiction that his rule was the continuation of the Roman Republic and that the Senate was his partner. Thus, an emperor's authority was based on republican offices and powers, such as the office of consul, the proconsular imperium, which gave command of the army, and the tribunician power, which now enabled the enactment of legislation, all of which were nominally granted by the Senate. To demonstrate the partnership with the Senate, base metal coins bore the letters SC, Senatus Consulto, by consultation with the Senate. When it came to the imperial succession, there was no special word for a designated successor, and no constitutional means for selecting one. Rather, emperors indicated their successors by assigning to them the same powers they had, that is, the proconsular imperium and the tribunician power. In addition, because political loyalty was inherited, prudent emperors conciliated the army by ensuring that their successor was their son, either by blood or by adoption, thus creating an unofficial form of hereditary succession. Failing to name a successor risked the outbreak of civil wars, as happened after the suicide of Nero in 68 and the assassination of Commodus in 192. As we just saw, the most effective way for emperors to make their intended successors known was by using the coinage. Beginning with Augustus, as seen on the denarius of his grandchildren Gaius and Lucius Caesars, and on an aureus of Nero, young members of the imperial family were given the title Princeps Juventutis, or leader of the youth, when they reached the age of 14 or 15. But at this time, the title was not, as often assumed, an indication of the designated successor. Rather, it marked the beginning of the political career of a teenage male member of the imperial family. This title also was...
What's up?
This title, hi Mark, I can hear you. Okay, that title also was used by Vespasian in 69, immediately after the Civil War, in which he has seized the throne. As a usurper, he was eager to legitimatize his rule and establish a dynasty. On this aureus, his sons Titus and Domitian not only are jointly called leaders of the youth, but also given the rank of Caesar, as opposed to Augustus, indicating that they were potential successors. After these few instances, however, the designation Princeps Juventutis fell into desuetude for over 100 years. But the rank of Caesar continued to indicate a successor, as on this aureus of Trajan, naming Hadrian as Caesar, and on this aureus of where Antoninus Pius adopted Marcus Aurelius as Caesar. Not until 175 did Marcus Aurelius, in the Julio-Claudian tradition, revive the title of Princeps Juventutis, granting it to his 14-year-old son Commodus, who also received not only the rank of Caesar, but also the designation Filius Augusti, son of Augustus, clearly indicating a dynastic element in the succession. This was all just in time for the first emperor to use the coinage to advertise his successors on a large scale. Septimius Severus, like Vespasian, a successful usurper who was concerned about establishing both his legitimacy and his own dynasty. Here, a gold aureus displays a family portrait showing not only his sons and intended successors, Caracalla and Geta, but also his wife Julia Domna, attesting to the increasingly important role played by women when it came to establishing the succession. Caracalla and Geta both began their imperial careers with the rank of Caesar and the conventional title of Princeps Juventutis. Small matter that as soon as they jointly succeeded to the throne in 211, Caracalla executed Geta. After Caracalla himself was murdered in 217, his illegal successor Macrinus used the same method for trying to found a dynasty, naming his 9-year-old son Diodumenianus Caesar and Princeps Juventutis. In 221, however, 12-year-old Severus Alexander was named Caesar, but not Princeps Juventutis, perhaps because his cousin, the Augustus Elagabalus, was only 6 years older than he was. This brings us to the imperial crisis, a 50-year period when civil wars and barbarian invasions racked the empire. Short-lived emperors tried desperately to establish new dynasties and frantically advertised their successors, always their sons, on their coinage, regularly giving them the rank of Caesar and the title Princeps Juventutis, a title especially appropriate because most of them were aged 21 or less. Thus, Maximinus the Thracian elevated his 19-year-old son Maximus, but they both survived only 3 years. Then Philip the Arab promoted his 6-year-old son, also Philip, but they lasted only 5 years. Trajan Decius named both of his sons, 25-year-old Herennius Etruscus and 21-year-old Hostilianus, as successors, but they all died after only 2 years. Trebonianus Gallus then made his 21-year-old son Volusianus Caesar and Princeps Juventutis. When he promoted him to Augustus just a few months later, the Princeps title was contradictorily retained. It usually was associated only with the Caesar. These two lasted only 2 years. Subsequently, in 253, Valerian promoted his adult 36-year-old son directly to the rank of Augustus and split the empire between them. Gallienus then named his 2 sons, first 6-year-old Valerian II, and then 12-year-old Saturninus Caesar and Princeps Juventutis, creating a 3-generation dynasty. Both, however, predeceased him, and in 268, Gallienus was assassinated. The emperors Claudius Gothicus, Aurelian, Tacitus, and Probus had no sons, but in the breakaway Gallic Empire, Tetricus continued the tradition in 273 by making his young son Tetricus II Caesar and Princeps Juventutis. 10 years later, Carus immediately raised his 2 sons, 32-year-old Carinus and 28-year-old Numerianus, to Caesar and Princeps Juventutis. All were dead within 2 years. All these emperors used the coinage in an attempt to establish dynasties by naming their sons Caesars and giving them the title Princeps Juventutis. They just were not very successful in staying in office very long. But meanwhile, the old Principate of Augustus continued to chug along, with the Senate still granting the powers of an emperor, as seen in 275 when it named Tacitus to succeed Aurelian, and the coinage still bore the old SC designation by consultation of the Senate. But not for long. In 284, the Emperor Diocletian brought the civil wars to an end. It was clear that the old haphazard method of imperial succession, with imperial powers being granted by the Senate, no longer worked. Diocletian therefore implemented an entirely new vision of how the empire should be governed and emperor selected. He removed all remaining authority from the Senate, and the letters SC now no longer appeared on the coins. He also followed Valerian's model and appointed colleagues to share the rule in different sections of the empire. But in doing so, he abandoned the unofficial practice of hereditary succession and appointed not family members, but army generals. Thus, in 286, Diocletian promoted the 36-year-old general Maximianus, and following tradition, gave him the rank of Caesar and the child's title Princeps Juventutis. Soon afterward, in 293, Maximianus was promoted to Augustus, and 2 more generals were named Caesar and Princeps Juventutis, Galerius and Constantius. Unlike the Caesars and leaders of the youth of the 3rd century, who often were mere figureheads intended to provide stability and continuity, Diocletian's Caesars ruled in their own right. This created the Tetrarchy, or rule by 4 emperors, which had a succession principle built right into it, where one's colleagues also were one's successors. So each Caesar was to be the successor of the Augustus. This scheme was intended to avoid the succession problems of the imperial crisis, for there never would be any doubt about who the next emperor would be. In order to cement the relationships among the tetrarchs, a number of family ties by marriage also were created. Constantius married Maximianus' daughter Theodora, and Galerius married Valeria, the daughter of Diocletian, whose appearance on Tetrarchic coinage again illustrates the important role of women in creating dynastic legitimacy. This all brings us to the second stage of our 3-stage rocket. Constantine's complicated personal experience as a successor. In 305, in order to put his succession plan into effect, Diocletian and his unwilling colleague Maximianus retired to be succeeded as Augusti by Galerius and Constantius. This meant that 2 new Caesars had to be chosen. But rather than making the logical selections, Constantine, the son of Constantius, and Maxentius, the son of Maximianus, the choice fell upon 2 supporters of Galerius, Severus and Maximinus Daza. Daza was given the traditional epithet of princeps juventutis, and the short-lived Severus no doubt was as well, although no examples survive for him. The bypassing of the 2 obvious candidates had predictable results. When Constantius died in the year 306, the army, which always loved sons, hailed Constantine as Augustus at York in Britain, and in Rome, Maxentius soon followed suit. Galerius, now the senior Augustus, then promoted Severus to Augustus in the West, whereas Constantine was demoted to Caesar and given the traditional designation of legitimacy, princeps juventutis, both of which titles he accepted, as you see on this coin of 307. Maxentius, the odd man out, declared himself first princeps invictus, meaning unconquered leader, a title curiously similar to princeps juventutis, and then Augustus. Meanwhile, in 307, Severus was killed in Italy, and Constantine allied himself with Maxentius, marrying Maxentius' sister Fausta, and reassuming the title of Augustus. In 308, and I want to warn all of you that there's going to be a quiz on this at the end of my talk. In 308, in an attempt to restore the Tetrarchy, Galerius called a council at Carnuntum on the Danube. Once again, Constantine was reduced to the rank of Caesar, and out of nowhere, another buddy of Galerius, Licinius, without having been Caesar, was appointed as the new Augustus in the West. In an effort to conciliate Maximianus Daza, who had been snubbed as the new Augustus, and Constantine, who resented the demotion, Galerius fobbed them off with the title of Filius Augusti, son of Augustus. Although Galerius gave Constantine that title on his own Eastern coins, Constantine was having none of it, and he never used it. Constantine continued to use the title of princeps juventutis, uncanonically affiliating it with the rank of Augustus rather than Caesar, as if thumbing his nose at Galerius. All of this shows that the Tetrarchy wasn't working, and it collapsed. In the year 310, there were 6 emperors. But by 313, as a consequence of civil wars, suicides, and untimely deaths, there were only two emperors left, Constantine and Licinius, who divided the Roman world, as you see here. And to seal the deal, Licinius married Constantine's sister, Constantia. Which brings us to the third stage of our rocket, Constantine's plans for choosing colleagues and successors. Like Vespasian and Septimius Severus, Constantine was a successful usurper, concerned about choosing successors, about gaining legitimacy and establishing a dynasty. But he did not have any past precedents for doing that actually worked. The granting of imperial powers by the Senate had failed. Diocletian's ingenious plan to have the choice of successors built into the selection of colleagues had failed because it ignored family members. So Constantine was on his own. His plans went through many permutations and combinations that can be clarified by studying the coinage. Moreover, as of 313, we need to remember that there still was another player in the game, Licinius, who also was concerned with his own succession. Initially, it would seem that they separated the concept of colleagues from the concept of successors, choosing competent adults to be colleagues, but their children as their successors. Thus, around 315, Constantine floated the idea of naming a colleague to assist in the rule. A certain Bassianus, a collateral family member, the husband of his half-sister Anastasia, whom he proposed to make Caesar in Italy. But almost immediately, Bassianus was implicated in a plot against Constantine, and he was executed. This would be the only time that Constantine would propose a non-blood relative as a colleague or as a successor. In the year 316, warfare erupted between Constantine and Licinius. In response, Licinius raised a non-family member, the experienced general Valerius Valens, to the rank of Augustus. After an inconclusive battle, peace was made in March of 317, and the short-lived Valens was executed. The two emperors then made some collective succession plans. They jointly recognized three Caesars, two sons of Constantine, Crispus, about 11 years old, the son of Constantine's first wife, Minervina, and Constantine the second, barely 1 month old, the son of Constantine's second wife, Fausta, the daughter of Maximianus, and Licinianus, the 20-month-old son of Licinius and Constantine's sister Constantia. When it came to spreading the news of their dynastic promotions and plans, both emperors made extensive use of the coinage. Unlike the Tetrarchy, where all the emperors were all portrayed together, Constantine and Licinius only depicted selfies of their own dynasty. Thus, in the dynasty of Licinius, only Licinius and his son Licinius II appear, for example, as a father-son team on this 4 aureus medallion. As for Constantine, he manufactured a dynasty by claiming, as his great-great-uncle, the short-lived Emperor Claudius II Gothicus, and striking posthumous issues, circa 317, that even depicted a lion. Here we are back to the lions again. Beginning in 320, Constantine issued a series of coins and medallions that presented his first dynastic plan. This silver milliorensis portrays Constantine as Augustus on the obverse, and Crispus a slightly larger on the left, and Constantine II as Caesars on the reverse. In addition, like the child emperors of the 3rd century, not to mention Constantine himself, Crispus, now at the canonical age of about 16, received the traditional title of a designated successor, Princeps Juventutis, as on a 2 solidus medallion from Trier and on a solidus from Sirmium. 3-year-old Constantine II, however, was too young for that, but he did appear on a series of solidi commemorating putative victories over the Franks and the Alemanni, issued in the names of Constantine and Crispus and Constantine II. By this means, Constantine affiliated his sons with the family's tradition of victory. But it was Crispus who got the most attention as the eldest, as on this gilded copper medallion, Crispus is shown being greeted by Constantine with the legend, "The glory of the age, the virtue of the 2 Caesars." The difference between the Caesars could not have been more stark. One was old and experienced enough to be a colleague of his father. The other was a mere child. More to the point, Constantine's succession coinage adopted a formal succession iconography showing family portraits. Silver Miliarenses, minted in the names of all 3, Constantine himself, Crispus, and Constantine II, depicted Crispus and Constantine standing on either side of their father under an arch with the legend "Felicitas Romanorum," the happiness of the Romans. Like the gold multiple solidus medallions, the large silver Miliarensis was not part of the coinage issued for the general public, but was used for the donatives distributed on special occasions to the army and imperial officials. It was to these targeted audiences that Constantine needed to make his succession plans clear. In the early 320s, hostilities broke out again, and in 324, Licinius again appointed another non-family member as a colleague, naming his Magister Officiorum, or Master of Offices, Martinianus as Augustus. Licinius was defeated at the Battle of Chrysopolis on September 17th and surrendered soon afterwards. Martinianus had his throat slit. Licinius was executed in early 325, and little Licinius too soon afterward. This left Constantine in control of the whole empire and free to arrange the imperial succession as he saw fit. According to the 4th century historian Aurelius Victor, in this way the republic began to be governed by the authority of one man, with his children receiving the dissimilar titles of Caesar. Henceforth, only family members would be named emperor, and they would be given the rank of Caesar, not Augustus. In November of 324, Constantine revised his succession plan by promoting to Caesar Constantius II, now 7 years old and just a year younger than his brother Constantine. The silver coinage, using the now traditional iconography and legend Felicitas Romanorum, and issued in the names of all of the members of the imperial college, now depicted 3 Caesars. The 4th century historian Eutropius commented, "At that time the Roman world was under 1 Augustus and 3 Caesars, which never had happened before." At the same time, a series of coins focused on the role of Constantine's wife Fausta in his plans for the succession. On a gold medallion issued in the name of the most noble Caesar Crispus, family unity was emphasized by depicting Fausta with her hands on the shoulders of her 7-year-old son Constantine II and her 20-year-old stepson Crispus, who are clasping hands. One happy family, it would seem. A solidus, where's my other one? Oh, yeah, there's the happy family. A solidus has her holding 2 infants, probably her biological children, Constantine and Constantius, who were described as the hope of the Republic. And a solidus, with the legend, the dutifulness of the empress, commemorates the birth of her 3rd son, Constans, the year before. Meanwhile, Crispus, far the eldest son at 20, continued to get most of the attention. His position as princeps juventutis was reiterated, and he was depicted on this solidus as a full-grown adult spearing a defeated barbarian. If Constantine had expected the succession situation to remain like this, he soon was disappointed. For in 326, disaster struck. First, Crispus was executed under mysterious circumstances, and soon thereafter, Fausta was put to death. This left only 2 Caesars, Constantine II and Constantius II. Had Constantine wanted another Caesar, he could have added the infant Constans, but he declined to do so. Depictions of the imperial college now reverted to Constantine and 2 Caesars, now Constantine II and Constantius II. Subsequent coinage also occasionally depicted the 2 Caesars in other ways, as in 326 on a special occasion when both were consuls. In the early 330s, perhaps associated with the founding of Constantinople, came a series of massive 9 solidus medallions, each weighing 1/8 of a pound of gold. One of them depicts Constantine enthroned, with Constantine II on his right and Constantius II on his left, and the legend Perpetual Felicity of the Augustus and our Caesars. Another portrays Constantine standing flanked by Constantine II on his right and Constantius on his left, being crowned by the personifications of Rome and victory. The reverse legend reads Gaudium Romanorum, joy of the Romans. As always, these massive medallions were distributed only to very favored individuals, such as high-ranking civil and military officers and barbarian chieftains on special occasions. And the significance of these pieces as keepsakes and items of jewelry, as opposed to actual coinage, is demonstrated by the lupanners you see attached to them here. By 333, Constantine was at least 60 years old, and his succession plans suddenly began to change. On Christmas Day, the youngest son, Constans, now 10 years old, finally was made Caesar, as seen on a solidus pointedly declaring him most noble Caesar on both the obverse and reverse. Another 9 solidus medallion, once again with 3 Caesars, was issued in the name of the new Caesar Constans and commemorated the revised succession plan with the legend securitas perpetuus, perpetual security. It may reflect Constantine's desire to create a really permanent plan for the future. Eusebius of Caesarea summarized Constantine's succession plans as he approached the end of his reign, circa 335. By his 30th year, his three sons had been admitted at different times as his colleagues in the empire. The first, Constantine, obtained the distinction about the 10th year of his reign. Constantius, the second son, was proclaimed Caesar about the 20th year, whereas Constans III was advanced to the same dignity on the 30th anniversary of his father's reign. Out of a desire to show one promotion every 10 years, Eusebius's math is a little off, but he can be forgiven for trying to demonstrate that there had been some kind of master plan for the succession rather than just random selections based on random circumstances. But this plan turned out to be not very perpetual at all. For on September 18, 335, Constantine's nephew Dalmatius also was raised to the rank of Caesar, portrayed on yet another 9 solidus medallion, this one with 4 Caesars. We're beginning to run out of space on the coins now, and we need a program to keep track of all the players. Constantine went all out to promote his succession plans. All 4 Caesars were commemorated on gold solidi from mints all around the empire with the ancient title of princeps juventutis, or designated successor, an apparent effort to convey an impression of ancient legitimacy. Not only that, at about the same time, Dalmatius's brother Hannibalianus not only was given the rank of nobilissimus, most noble, but was also made king of kings and of the Pontic nations, meaning that Constantine now had included 5 family members in his succession plans. In addition, Julius Constantius, the father of Dalmatius and Hannibalianus, was made nobilissimus, patrician, and consul, although this was not commemorated on the coinage. And this gives us the final blast off of Constantine's succession plan. Where's my final blast off? Yes. Had this plan been put into effect, the Roman Empire would have been divided up like this. On May 22nd, 337, Constantine died unexpectedly, and his carefully made plans for his succession immediately imploded. Constantine's nephews, Dalmatius and Hannibalianus, and their fathers and others were murdered by the soldiers, for whom collateral relatives were expendable. As in the past, for the army, only sons were acceptable as successors. At a meeting at Pannonia on September 9th, the 3 Caesars were acclaimed Augustus by the army, just as Constantius had been in 306 after the death of his own father, and the empire now looked like this. The army, not the Senate, was the body that made emperors legitimate. Constantine's sons briefly continued Constantine's policy of depicting the imperial college on coins and medallions with family portraits. Thus, immediately after the 3 were named Augustus, they issued gold coinage depicting all 3 of them with the legend Perpetual Felicity. Then, after the death of Constantius II in 340, there was a brief return to the Felicitas Romanorum dynastic type, as on this silver Milliorensis, making it clear that the imperial college had been reduced to 2 Augusti. Only after the murder of Constans by the usurper Magnentius in 350 did the sole surviving son of Constantine, Constantius II, name any colleagues, if not successors, following his father's model. He chose family members and made them Caesar, not Augustus. Having no male offspring, he promoted his nephew Constantius Gallus and advertised the new college using the traditional iconography. But this arrangement did not end well. In 353, Gallus was executed for mismanagement. In 355, Constantius's other nephew, Julian, was named Caesar, but there is no recorded use of the standard dynastic type. After a revolt against his uncle in 360, Julian became Augustus and had the last word when he rather poignantly issued the last Constantinian version of this dynastic type, with himself as the last man standing, accompanied by the goddess Victory and the legend Victory of the Romans. In 361, Constantine was killed fighting the Persians, ending the dynasty of Constantine, and Constantine's dynastic iconography ended here, with one exception. I mean, if you're in the Roman world, there's always an exception. After the brotherly team of Valentinian and Valens assumed the emperorship in 364, they made an homage to the dynasty of Constantine with one final manifestation of the Constantinian dynastic iconography, again on Ameliorensis, with the legend Glory of the Romans. And in the late 360s, Valentinian's son Gratian, albeit already in Augustus, made the last known use of the ancient title Princeps Juventutis, bringing an end to an era. So to conclude, during his lifetime, as a result of births, deaths, and political vagaries, Constantine's plans for his colleagues and successor went through at least 5 stages. And we can make several observations. For one thing, he regularly depicted his succession plans on the coinage using a family portrait type of iconography, presumably to ensure there would be a smooth succession. But this did not work because of a second observation. For nearly 20 years, he preferred sons. Only at the very end did he include nephews, and this ended badly when they were murdered. All the advertising in the world would not alter the army's preference for sons. And thirdly, Constantine named only Caesars. He never named any other Augusti. But this policy likewise caused problems when, after his death, the empire experienced a dicey period when there were no Augustuses. All these lessons were learned well by future emperors, who almost always appointed sons as successors and almost always appointed them directly to the rank of Augustus, thus skipping the entry-level rank of Caesar. These tweaks on Constantine's model created an exceptionally stable form of succession that lasted for another 1,100 years until the final end of the Roman Empire in 1453. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, Ralph, very much for that interesting presentation. Just want to open the floor up. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or unmute, and feel free to just ask them.
A quick question. Were you able to see the slides?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Because I just had a panic attack now when I tried to end the slideshow and it was dead in the water. I thought, oh crap, the slides weren't showing.
Yeah. Don't worry, I wouldn't have let you go through the whole thing without the slides advancing.
Hi, this is Richard Belson. Can you hear me?
Richard, yes.
First, I want to compliment you on an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed the slides, and it's a really complicated period that you explained very well. So thank you for doing that. I just want to mention, I have Ameliorensis of Gratian with the Gloria Romanorum with Gratian and Valentinian II.
Okay.
So you didn't mention that coin type, so I just wanted to mention it that it exists.
Okay. What kind of coin type is that? Would you like to describe it for us?
Well, it's ameliorans like the other ones you showed. And obverse, it has Gratian. And on the reverse, it has a Gratian facing Valentinian II.
Oh, well, I haven't run across that one. If you could send me a copy, and here, you think you do, you think you dig deep, and then you come to the ANS, and you always find something new. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Looks like Lawrence has a question.
I was just wondering, other than a very brief passing reference to a trinity of successors, there was no mention of Christianity. And I'm just wondering if you could say a little bit about how that did or did not play into Constantine's plans.
Plans for I'm trying to think of a of course, at least as of around 312, Constantine was pretty much in cahoots with the Christians. So I don't think there would have been any adversarialness there. And of course, we did mention Eusebius of Caesarea, who was one of his advisors, also his biography. So as to whether he was consulting Christians on this, well, I don't know. What do you think?
I have no idea. But
Yeah.
I mean, he's sort of referred to often as the first Christian emperor, but he didn't really turn the empire Christian, right? That happened somewhat later, right?
Well, I mean, if you're going to go down that path, and I will go down the rabbit hole with you there, Lawrence. Of course, this is Constantine inherited the Arian controversy, which was all about the distinction. What were the relative roles of the Father and the Son? In which it was argued by the Arians that the Father was in some way superior to the Son, which you could also, again, to kind of follow this line of argument, which is also what Constantine was doing by not promoting another Augustus. And I'll go one step even further. Even though Constantine did oversee the Council of Nicaea, which condemned Arianism, by the time Constantine died, he was baptized by an Arian bishop. So, maybe there's something to it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Or feel free to type them into the chat if you'd just rather not read them out loud. But there's a comment from Warren. Just saying, wonderful slides with many fascinating and spectacular coins.
This is Richard Belson. I have another question. What's your take on the whole dynamic between Constantine and Fausta and Crispus? I mean, it seems to me like Fausta was engineering to get Crispus out of the way. And so she made up a story, and Constantine bought the story and then killed Crispus, but then he found out that she lied, so he killed her too. But what's your take on what actually happened?
Oh, golly. I mean, that's another rabbit hole, Richard. Thank you for that. But it's funny that you should mention that because my last conundrum, when I was going over my slides and my argument this morning, it had to do with Fausta and Crispus and Constantine's children and those solidi and medallions that show Fausta with the sons. I mean, on one of them, she is sewn with her arms on the shoulders of Constantine II, the eldest of her sons, and Crispus. I mean, just basically, obviously, to show that there's some kind of family unity amongst the mother, amongst the stepmother and the stepson and the son. And are you thinking, is this protesting too much? And then there's the other Solidus showing her holding two infants. Well, obviously they're not Crispus on Constantine II because by then Crispus was much bigger. So they have to be Constantine II and Constantius II. But where's Crispus? I mean, was that coin issued in the very small window between the time that Crispus was executed and Fausta was executed? When looking at this kind of information, and I will make my pitch here, that it's my firm opinion that you have to go with the evidence. You might not like the evidence. The evidence might not fit your theory, but the one coin that has Fausta with Crispus and Constantine II, I just don't think you would have left out one of the Caesars in that coin. So that I think it had to have been minted before Constantius was promoted. And likewise, her with the two infants. Where's Crispus? Anyway, there was another point there where, if you remember at the beginning, there was the coin where a Crispus is shown greeting Constantine, or Constantine is greeting Crispus, and it speaks of our Caesars, Caess. That clearly indicates two, even though in the coin auction catalogs and even in some museum catalogs, this coin is dated to 325, 326, when there were three Caesars. No, that's just not possible. I mean, they knew the difference between 2 and 3. So you might not like it that way, but it's, I mean, the coins are trying to tell us something. And if we don't understand it, it doesn't mean the coins are wrong. It just means we don't understand it. And anyway, that's my pitch. I'm sorry, as to your question, Richard, I kind of waffled on it, but yeah, I think, I mean, is this a story like, Moses and the Pharaoh's wife? I don't know. I mean, I will say in that regard, if you're talking about emperors, and this is the case throughout the history of all the emperors, if you get a mysterious death, the rumor mill is just going to be churning out all kinds of stuff.
I've got a question, if you can hear me over here, about the difference between Constantine's system of succession and the one that preceded the Tetrarchy. So it may be kind of a basic question here, but I see the difference with Diocletian's model is returning to heredity, basically. But was that not the practice of the barracks rulers?
Oh, the barracks rule. In fact, one of the reasons that there were barracks rulers, and that's an excellent question because it explains a lot, is because back at that time, emperors were still approved by the Senate. Oh. I mean, you weren't a legal emperor until you had been approved by the Senate. So you get made emperor on the Rhine by your troops. What do you have to do? You've got to take your troops into Italy and to defeat the current emperor. And meanwhile, those barbarians realizing, hey, there's nobody guarding the frontier. I mean, it was this kind of situation that made it very clear to Diocletian that the previous system wasn't working. And I should say, the emperors of that period, the imperial crisis, I mean, these were not wankers. I mean, they were very, very, very capable individuals. and they knew there were problems. And of course, we didn't have time to get into this, and they made efforts to try to deal with those problems, to try to solve those problems. But the problems were just too big for them. I mean, what's really amazing is that the empire survived that period at all. But one of the reasons that it survived was because by that time there was such a well-entrenched bureaucracy that you could have really bad stuff going on at the top, and yet the bureaucracy continues to chug along and to see you through that period. I'm not going to make any modern analogies, but you just, I mean, a bureaucracy that is so huge. I mean, and the Roman bureaucracy is getting bigger all the time. And so you've got these changes at the top. That's my point number one. My point number two is that in ancient Rome, the highest virtue was to do your duty. Pietas. That doesn't mean piety. That means duty. Even the worst of emperors, you talk about Caligula or Domitian or Commodus, they all would have knowledge that they were living under the rule of law. They all would have acknowledged that they may break the law, but they would know they were doing that. And so you've got that very solid foundation that, well, explains why the Roman Empire lasted for 1,500 years.
Yeah. There's a question from Peter asking, when did the Eastern Roman Empire become Byzantium?
Oh, yeah. We've got another bad boy here. Well, the technical answer is that it never did. I mean, when it was with a conscious forethought when I said the end of the Roman Empire was in 1453. The term, and they always call themselves the Roman Empire. Okay, the term Byzantine Empire was invented in the 18th and 19th century by racist German and British politicians, German and British historians who couldn't bear the thought that these Easterners, these Syrians and Egyptians, were the descendants of the Romans. So they just coined this term Byzantine Empire, and now we're stuck with it. So well, as long as you say, well, when I say Byzantine Empire, I really mean Roman Empire, but yeah, but no, that's a really excellent point. And I'm glad you made it, because they never called themselves Byzantines. In fact, even in the modern day, if you call something Byzantine, is that a compliment? No. Yeah, and so when I'm dealing with university politics, I tell my colleagues, come on, I'm a Byzantine historian. You can't put anything over on me.
Right. Well, it's just a smidge after 2 now. So I just want to say thank you again, Ralph. This was a really great presentation. Very interesting, lots of great photos, a lot of compliments in the chat. So thank you for sticking with us and sharing all this with us. I do want to mention just real quick, we won't be meeting next week because it'll be the 4th of July, and so we'll be closed. But the week after that, we'll be speaking with Angel Navarro Zayas, who will be speaking about paper money used in the Spanish Caribbean Basin in Spanish Louisiana during the late 18th century. All right, hope to see you there.
Thank you, everybody.